Welcome to the latest edition of First State Kopites podcast. We are going back to, I guess, an old agenda that we had at the very beginning, where we invited people from around the US and other parts of the world to talk about their supporters clubs, talk about their Red story and their Reds experience. We're delighted to have Nick Coughlin, I hope I said the name right, who was one of the founders of the supporters club in Washington, DC. He's going to tell us, hopefully, some fun stories about how that club emerged and grew, and maybe some of his own personal experiences of visiting Anfield. Joined as usual by Sean and Daz. And if you're watching this on YouTube rather than listening to it, probably not the best images we've ever had, but hopefully it'll sound fine on all of those podcasts. This being a podcast for Liverpool supporters in Delaware and friends of those same Liverpool supporters. Thanks for joining us on your preferred platform. We're available on all of them. This is episode 7 of season 3. And yeah, so this is, what is it, September 13th, day after Liverpool beat Leeds 3-0 at Elland Road, which I'm sure we'll come on to talk about. But we're going to start with Nick. Nick, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Pleasure. I really appreciate and enjoy having these types of discussions with fellow Reds. As you mentioned, I'm one of the founding members of LFC DC, which is the official Liverpool supporters club of Washington, DC. It started back in 2013, 2014 with a Facebook group, and just connected with a bunch of fellow Reds in the DC area, and we would just talk about the matches and the rosters and just everyday support for our beloved club. And then we started talking about finding a place to meet up. And thankfully at the time, there were already 2 locations in the DC area where Liverpool supporters were getting together. The first was Queen Vic British Pub in DC. And the second was Rira Irish Pub, which at the time was in Arlington. It's since closed, but back then it was one of the meeting locations for Liverpool supporters. So I started there, meeting these folks in person, and started talking about a supporters club. And as always, the numbers are pretty small in those early days. But in 2015, we been getting the word out online. Just meeting people, trying to get any outlet we could to get the word out about our supporters club, because in DC there's such a huge population of folks from all over the world, and a lot of those folks are Premier League football club supporters. A lot of those folks are Liverpool supporters, and so I knew it was just a matter of trying to connect with that there'd be enough to really have a nice, vibrant supporters club in the area. So we received official status as an official supporters club in 2015, which was fantastic, major milestone for us. But during those early days, talking to folks like Darren in Baltimore and Dara up in New York City, over LFCNY, I leaned on them a lot to get their guidance and wisdom. Darren, I remember Tim telling me all the time, just let it grow organically. Don't force it. Don't push it. Just let it, it'll come. And sure enough, it did. Obviously the supporters, the turnout seemed to parallel with the success of the club, so there were some pretty light numbers during those Hodgson years. But with Brendan, some of those great seasons we had under him, you could barely get another person in the pub for those big matches, like against City with Coutinho's late winner back in the day, and different finals that we had played in, FA Cup final, and so yeah, it was fantastic. It was a great run. I enjoyed my time with the supporters club. I've told folks, and folks have told me, it was like my third child. I have 2 boys and a wife, and we would just go to the pub. That was it. Every weekend we go to the pub, and my boys grew up there on the shoulders of others with scarves in the air singing. And now looking back, these people are family as much as anybody else. And it's, when I look back, down the road, LFC DC and kind of the start will be one of the special things that I was certainly a part of. A lot of friends over the years that, they're friends. They're not Liverpool supporters now. It just goes beyond that. So a couple years ago, I stepped away. Both my boys play travel soccer. So we're if you're a travel soccer parent, you know that you have no life once that starts up. So I don't. I do transportation and financing for them, and unfortunately, it's a rare event when I can make it out where they don't have a match day on their own. But it worked out yesterday. My oldest son played down in Raleigh, had a late afternoon game, so I was able to go to the home pub of LFC Raleigh, the London Bridge pub, and watch the match down there. I met up with Ken Kendra, who is the longtime founding member of LFC Raleigh, which was great. Got to chat with him for a little bit and watch the match. So, but it's a community. I mean, like I said, I'm anywhere I'm at, whether I'm in Seattle. I traveled before COVID. I traveled a lot for work, and that's what I do if I was in there on the weekends. Just Google, where's the Liverpool Supporters Club bar, and more often than not, there was one, and you go there, and it's, you don't know these people from nothing, and you put an arm around your shoulders and buy you a pint, and off you go. So, so that's my journey through the LFC DC. It's been fantastic, and it's in great hands now with Alancia Felder and great board, and the numbers pre-COVID were fantastic, and looking forward to those days returning back to normal soon.
So a few different directions to go in, but just to close it out about the supporters club, what is happening right now? I mean, no, we've got our own story, but interested in, kind of, have people started to go back? Like, what do the numbers look like?
Yeah, so it's like DC is a whole different planet, as we know, we across multiple aspects. So during this period, there have been maybe reservations required, capacity limits. In Virginia, our current home pub in Virginia is Crystal City Sports Pub, which is a great location. Queen Vic British Pub is our other home. So that's been the original home since day one. So the DC location, a little different at times during the COVID period. But I mean, right now they're open, they're showing matches. There might be mask requirements. I know I was at Crystal City Sports Pub a few weeks ago for our opener against Norwich, and turnout was pretty good. I think we had probably 40 to 50. And so it was good. Luckily we have a pretty decent sized space, high ceiling, and I think folks felt comfortable enough. Wearing masks in, and obviously we sit down and eat, you got to take it off. But I think numbers have come up a little bit. Certainly they're not what they were pre-March of 2019, but it's to everybody's comfort level, and everybody has different risks, and so it's probably going to be like that still for a while. But I think pubs at least have been open and showing the matches, so which is in the right direction.
Yeah. So Daz, you know more about Nick than I do, so I'm sure you've got a question.
Honestly, I don't. When I was talking to Nick at first, I was offering him advice because I was young and I needed the money, but he took it and he ran. He took it and he ran with it, and he's turned it into something great. I just don't want to know if he remembers the Ronnie Whelan night and what his favorite memory from that was.
Yeah, so we co-hosted along LFC DC co-hosted with LFC Baltimore a Legends event with Ronnie Whelan, and so Darren and I kind of ran point on that along with Shap and some others, and I think my memory that I recall is just picking him up beforehand and that car ride, and just how surreal. I was in the back seat, and just how surreal it was that Ronnie Whelan was in the front seat of this vehicle that I'm riding, through the streets of Baltimore. That was for me, that was like kind of my mind blown. Ronnie was great that night, told all the stories. The line I remember, and I tell folks this all the time, he was talking about, I'm going to forget the name now. The Danish midfielder back in the 70s. Jan Molby. Mm-hmm. He said Jan Molby was the only player he knew that actually gained weight while playing. And Brian McLaughlin, who owns Carragher's up in NYC. If you know Brian, he's a great guy, great Liverpool supporter. I told him that line a couple of years ago, and he just about collapsed. He thought that was the funniest thing he'd heard. But yeah, a lot of great memories from that night. But certainly picking him up, just first meeting him, and in the car and just riding around, it was just, it was kind of out of this world. I'm like, what is going on? So yeah, that was a great night for sure.
That is awesome.
Oh, you probably remember more than I did, because I took him back to his hotel, and he said he wasn't interested in going to the hotel. He wanted to go and have a couple extra pints, and he ended up like randomly hooking up with a couple of mix, because apparently we were washing mix in Baltimore, and they started talking about the boys in green, and the next thing you know, like I woke up the next morning. It was the man could drink, and clearly I cannot.
So one of his stories is about like playing drunk, isn't it? Actually, after they'd won the league. I don't know if he told this story there, but he says, going off on a tangent.
Yeah, I'm sure back in the day, before there was personal trainers and fitness and nutrition and all that stuff, it was a whole different ballgame, right?
Certainly was. Yes, yeah. So I won't put you on the spot, Sean. I'll give you time to form a question.
I used to live in the DC area for a while. I lived in Silver Spring, I guess, until about 2007, and then I lived in Annapolis until 2011. So it would have been before you formed the club. But just kind of curious, where did you watch the matches? You know, who'd you kind of relate to? You know, back then. You know, kind of in that, I don't know, 2005 to 2011 timeframe. So it is interesting how these things kind of evolved, you know, as the games got easier to watch, and we talked to other people about that too, you know. So
yeah, I mean, coverage has been night and day, right, from those days even. I mean, not that long ago, right? So long story short, I'm from Western Pennsylvania, graduated college in 03 and moved down to DC shortly thereafter. And so, you know, at the time, your options were pretty limited. You know, Setanta. I remember going to Summers, which was another big quote unquote soccer bar in Arlington. They were one of the few that carried Setanta. And so you go there and watch matches. That was kind of hit or miss, because if there was, God forbid, if there was an NFL game or, you know, the Redskins were on, and, you know, you got nothing, you were shut out. I think Fox Soccer Channel was a bit of, you know, certainly the next big step forward, because their coverage, you know, was much more. They showed more matches. I remember back in the day, they would, on their website, they'd have the weekly schedule, and it would list for 24 hours each day for the week. They would show every match they're going to play or show. And at the time, they had Serie A rights as well. And then they would show old matches. The programming wise, it was pretty good. And so I remember printing them out on like a Monday and then just highlighting things throughout the week that I wanted to watch. Again, this is before kids, when I had the time to do it. And so Fox Soccer Channel was certainly a big game changer moving forward from Setanta. And then obviously NBC Sports has taken it to a whole new level. And so yeah, to answer your question, a lot of it was I was just watching at home, you know, until I realized there were more folks local like me who love Liverpool, and you know, just learning more about supporters clubs and what they were doing. I mean, just that whole thing. I just, you know, it was one of those things we're just talking like, hey, why don't we meet up? You know, and that's first meetup was at the Green Turtle in Dulles, and that was just to make sure none of us were crazy axe murderers or whatever. That, you know, they seem normal online. You just don't know if you want to hang out with these people every Saturday morning. And it was a great group of folks, and yeah, that was it really. From there on, it just took on a life of its own.
Awesome. It's awesome. Several things. So actually, I think our supporters club, I felt like we'd made it when they didn't turn the Premier League game off to watch the Eagles. So like yesterday, there's an overlap in the game, and like all these Eagles people come in and walk right back out again because the game's on in our bar. So yeah.
Well, and credit to Queen Vic and Rerod. I mean, Liverpool was it. Like that, once we found those homes, and I mean that was it from day one. There was no conflict. Ryan Gordon, who owns Queen Vic, he's a Liverpool supporter, so that helped, right?
Yeah.
And Mark McElkerney, who was the manager at Rera, you know, was from overseas, and he got it, you know, and that's the key. When you can get on board with management, then you're in, you know, and so that's, without those two places, we wouldn't be where we were. And thankfully, with Crystal City Sports Pub, we found a great home now, and they support us just as great as everywhere else. So it's been good.
Good stuff. Do you want to give you a chance to share your experience of being at Anfield before we started recording? Sounded like you had quite a I don't know if it was a life-changing experience, but certainly a major life event going to Anfield.
Yeah, so I've been a few times. The last couple times I went, it was kind of a strange visit, but I got tickets to watch the Champions League final against Real Madrid at Anfield. And so they were, at the time, they were letting people in, and I think they did it for the semifinal as well, but they had put big screens on the pitch, and you could sit in the Kop and watch it. And so at the time, we had talked about going to Kiev, State Department security concerns, all that nonsense. We decided otherwise. And so we got tickets, and there was 7 of us that went over to watch a Champions League final in Anfield, which was kind of neat and weird at the same time. I was trying to explain to my mom. She's like, "Wait, you're going to watch it on TV?" It's like, "Well, no, it's on a TV, but it's a big screen." Like, yeah, they're playing, but it's on TV. They're like, "The kids are going to be there." Well, no, they're in Kiev, but so that was but it was a great experience despite the result. But the last time was in January of 2019. I took my 2 boys, surprised them. I picked them up from school at noon, told them that we were going to the dentist. And instead, my wife took the 3 of us to Dulles, and we flew over for the match against Crystal Palace. We were down 2-0 at halftime. We scored 3 goals in the second half. We had seats in the Kop. It was incredible. And I'd taken video of their reaction when we were in the school parking lot, and it actually made NBC SN several times throughout the day. And Rebecca Lowe featured it. It's still on YouTube. If you go to the Lowdown, it's her personal series. If you go to Lowdown, I think it's like Match Day 23. If you search that, they kind of feature us, and they show some pictures in the video as well of us handing them the tickets to the match and then their passports. And
but your kids are kind of Liverpool royalty, aren't they?
They've had some great experiences. Noah, my oldest, walked out with Raheem Sterling at Fenway before anyone knew who Raheem Sterling was, when he was 17 years old for a preseason friendly against Roma. And then my youngest, Nolan, he got to walk out with Hendo at Yankee Stadium just a couple years ago when we had the preseason match against, who did we play? Spurs?
Sporting Lisbon, was it? Was that the Sporting Lisbon game?
Yeah, Sporting Lisbon. Yeah. He got to walk out with Hendo. He was a mascot for that match as well.
Can I borrow the compromise that you have on whatever player or coach that you have? It sounds like it's some pretty juicy stuff.
Yeah, it was. It's very fortunate again, and it's all through this Supporters Club network and working with the club over the years. You just know people, and I hosted our own podcast with another gentleman from Australia for 3 years, Sean McGurty, who's unfortunately has since passed, and so we've done this whole scene years ago, and just getting to know people. I mean, like, as you guys know, the Liverpool network family community is unbelievable, and so I've been very fortunate. Opportunities have presented themselves, especially during those preseason tours. There's just, different things going on. And so, yeah, both my boys have been very fortunate for those opportunities. I don't think they appreciate it when they were 7 and 9 years old, respectively, but we have plenty of pictures and posters on the wall. Hopefully down the road, they'll think it's cooler than maybe they do now. So,
yeah. Wow. So I'm not going to tell my son. He did get to meet Ian Rush once, and I do have the photo, but that, not going to tell him. But okay, yeah, that sounds really, really awesome. So, when do you envisage going back to Anfield? Actually, that's a question I think we're all thinking about. Not like we're going next week, but
yeah, as soon as possible. If I come across tickets, I'm gone, and thankfully I've got her blessing. She is incredibly supportive of this crazy life that we all live, of supporting this club, and so I doubt I get over there before the end of the year. Just given everything that's going on, it's just so complicated now with quarantine period, and then it seems to change every week. There was a quarantine period, now there isn't. There is. They check up on you. I don't know if I necessarily want to go through that. So I'll probably wait till things. I know. I mean, as you know, the investment is huge between airfare and hotel, and so I assume it's still going to be a while.
Yeah.
soon as I can. That's for sure, because it's like no other.
Yes,
it's like no other. Anfield is like no other, and I think I wouldn't say we've all taken it for granted, but I think it's certainly something that we'll appreciate every time we go through that very tight turnstile a new degree.
I have to stand in line for 45 minutes to do so now, apparently, with this new ticketing system.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, but you can use your iPhone.
I want to go back soon, but I want to wait until they get that sorted out, though. So,
so let's not comment on that, how long that might be. Sorry if you guys have any more questions, but I figured we'd talk a little bit then about this weekend and maybe what's upcoming. I'm very conscious of the fact you talked about that Palace game where we were 2-0 down. I forgot about that because we played Palace at home this weekend.
Yes, we do.
So let's touch on that before we finish. This weekend, as our guest, Nick, I'll start with you. You can pick on whatever topic you want, but I can't think of a player who played badly. I kind of, one of my jokes is, now that Joel Matip is clearly one of the best defenders in the league, wouldn't you think the NBC commentators could get his name right?
He keeps making runs into the box like he did. He might be our best attacker too. He's unbelievable. He's like Bambi on ice, but he gets through there.
So for these purposes, because I watch it and then I'm not paying attention, I watch it again to know what went on. Did you see Salah was fuming at him for not passing to him instead of Brent?
Yeah, he threw a massive style fit for not getting the pass,
and recovered 3 seconds later and scored. Right?
Yeah.
So Nick, what did you take away from yesterday's game? Obviously, overshadowed a lot by the injury to Elliott. Although I don't know what to make of the news today because it sounded like weirdly optimistic.
The first thing I did today, I told my son, we were at the London Bridge pub in Raleigh. I turned to him after it happened. I said, the first thing I'm doing Monday morning is getting the Harvey Elliott jersey. And with the thanks to the Enfield shop, that's what I did. So it's on its way. Setting that aside, I thought we were brilliant. I thought out of the 4 matches we played thus far, that was the one that we looked the best from start to finish. When you look at the fixture list, away to Leeds is certainly one of the ones you think is going to be one of the more difficult away matches we have for the season. And I thought we handled everything incredibly well. I thought our attack was well. Our midfield played well. Thiago was brilliant. I looked at the stats today, his passing stats. I mean, he was off the charts. It was probably our most complete game, at least in my opinion, compared to Norwich and Burnley and Chelsea. You look back now, 4 matches in, we've only conceded 1 goal, 10 points out of 12. Everyone let everybody else get the hype. Let United get the hype with Ronaldo. Obviously, City gets the hype, and we'll just kind of coast along. I think it's been, obviously what we've seen for Virgil has been, there were a lot of question marks, but you just don't know how someone's going to come back from that absence. And I think he's been as solid as ever. Sadio's, had some frustrations, obviously, but it was great to see him get the goal. He certainly earned it for as many shots as he took. And I thought the front three played well. Overall, I can't complain. For me, that was the best we've looked yet. And like I said, the thing with Elliott, you think about it, we lost Virgil right around give or take this time last year. Obviously, the difference was we had no coverage for Van Dijk. The good thing if there is a silver lining, it's the fact we have 87 other midfielders that can slot in for Harvey. But it's something to be said for the fact he's 18 years old and he's started the last 3 matches for, one of the best clubs in the world. So, I saw Klopp after, right before the restart, after they had been taken off the field, he pounding his chest, probably trying to get the guys, re-engaged, re-energized. And you just wonder if that's going to be kind of the mantra for this season in terms of just playing for Harvey, do it for him.
I think he mouthed that actually after he came off. I think I'm no lip reader, but that's what it looked like. Maybe it was just me wanting him to say that. I don't know.
You willed it. That was overall brilliant performance. I was worried all week. I was worried. Away to Leeds is it's just tough. They're just nasty, and they're good. I was shocked that they only have, I think they're 2 points in 4 matches. I'm kind of surprised that they're, struggling like they are, but yeah, very happy, very pleased.
Yeah. So who knows with Leeds, right? I mean, I think last season they were the team that pressed the most without crowds. Everyone else had dropped off. I don't know if that's going to mean that we end up looking at this game going like, well, of course we're going to beat them because they struggle against everybody now. I don't know where that's going to go. One quick footnote: we were trying to avoid references to the publicity hound from Manchester, but that's okay. We'll
apologies.
We're going to talk about our own boys. So Sean, you can talk about Oxlade-Chamberlain's bizarre 15-minute cameo. But
there's a little comedy there at the end. I don't know. I would love to see Ox succeed, but that was not his best performance yesterday. Fortunately, game was already in the bag. Yeah, I thought it was. I agree. I think that was the best we played all season. You can nitpick certain things. I think that's probably the most impressive thing to me is we've been really, really good. Conceded 1 goal. We're dominating most matches. Even the Chelsea match, I thought we were, the better team. I felt clearly the better team when we were 11-11 before the red card. And there's still you can still envision us going up a level. This is the thing. I think that's the most impressive part to me. We're not quite as good as we've been in the past. And at the same time, I think Chelsea looked really good. I think it's going to be a much tighter race this year. But I really like our squad. I think we played great. I threw this out there in our chat that Thiago and Fabinho played in the midfield 10 times. We're 9-1 with 1 draw, and that was against Everton in the derby. So it should have been a win. So that makes me feel pretty good. Our defense looks pretty good. I mean, I guess the defense, it's crazy because we're hardly giving up any chances. But if you remember a couple of years ago, we were even better than this. So you kind of, feel like, maybe we could even improve on this, even though this is about as good as it gets. So yeah, I mean, it's just, the Harvey injury was just awful. It kind of ruined what would otherwise have been a great win. And I don't know if we'll talk about it later, but just the way they're officiating these games, it was kind of inevitable that it was going to happen to somebody. And unfortunately it was him. The tackle wasn't intentional, but the point is that they're almost encouraging that type of play. And so, you can't I don't fault the guy, but what do you think's going to happen if you don't call that as a foul, which I'm sorry. I know they said afterwards it was called on the pitch. He was not going to give a foul for that until he saw the injury. That was my interpretation of it. And then he decided to give a red card. It's almost after the fact. If you give a red card, he wouldn't have allowed the play to go on. I think Salah screamed and then he stopped the play. So that part of it's frustrating. And Tompkins Times had I want to say it was a really good piece. It was really just an angry rant, but I think it's kind of like how most of us felt.
We did,
and he made all those points. Otherwise, I do want to say, I actually thought Mane, I know he's got a lot of criticism. I thought he played well. He wasn't finishing. But he had one of those games that I compared him to Sterling, Raheem Sterling, where he wasn't having a good day finishing, but he's getting in all these great positions. So, he should start finishing these eventually. And, last year we weren't even getting him into those positions most of the time. So, I think the goals will come for him. And Trent was great. Salah was great. Hard to complain too much other than the Harvey injury.
So Sean, I cannot believe you have not mentioned XG in this whole conversation.
It was only the second highest XG actually for any game because Man City had a higher one.
Did they?
But it was slightly higher. But
so we have a back and forth about XG. Some of us listen to it and some of us don't. Mane's XG was 2 point something.
Yeah, it was really high. I mean, our XG for the game was super high.
4 points.
We probably should have scored more than we did. I guess is the only, at halftime, I felt like we should have been 2 or 3 up. But hard to nitpick too much.
Yeah, that's timed out when we start talking about XG. Only other thing I would say is I did think that he was really unlucky with some of his efforts. Like they got the last minute blocks on a couple of occasions.
The goal he scored was really nice though. It was a great pass from Hendo and Thiago, set him up, and it was a nice finish. So,
So Daz, I'll go to you. I don't know if you want to talk about you're just a shit Kyle Walker, because I thought that's the kind of thing that you would pick up on.
Sorry, I've got dogs and children running around. It's never a dull moment here at Casa de Rudham. But so I'll wait. So anyway, I just wanted to raise one point about the match. It's actually had nothing to do with the match. I don't know if you follow Rebecca Tavares, Fabinho's wife.
Yeah,
I think we do.
Like, I think she's getting a handle, or maybe not, on the English language, because someone said in the Twitter comments, like, Fabinho is immense, and so his wife's reaction was, yes, he is. Like, that's either spot on or she's just not quite got the nuance of the English language yet. But either way, I thought it was a good laugh.
Or maybe
I don't think there's anything I can. What's that?
Maybe she has more nuance than you're guessing.
I honestly don't think there's anything I can add to these two sage gentlemen's synopsis of the match. I think overall it's exactly right. This is the best that we've played. Can you imagine if Fabinho wasn't allowed to play that game, or Alisson wasn't involved in that game? Because Alisson made that big save early on. And that speaks to, and that goes back to your Pawson's interpretation of what a foul is or isn't. That it wasn't just a leg that went across him; it was an arm too. And the verbal gymnastics or the rationalizations that pundits, the guys on air, are going through. It's like, well, the referees are now saying that if it's up to the guy to try and avoid the leg, or if he's. I'm like, are any of you guys watching this? It's just there's no reason for him not to call a foul in that situation. Yeah. And there was another one where Pawson twice gave yellow cards to players that pulled other players back, physically back. And then Virgil was going for a ball, and Bamford put 2 hands on his shoulders and pulled him back. And Pawson kept his hand out of his pocket. I just felt wildly inconsistent as always. Yeah. But it almost doesn't even bear mentioning anymore how poor the officiating has become, or at least how inconsistent it is. Like, I know we touched on before we got on air about the other guys on the other side of the park in their match today, and some of the thunderous tackles that Burnley seem to now have like license to be able to perpetuate at will. Because someone raised the point about Harvey hasn't had to. That was possibly one of the more innocuous challenges that he's had to avoid, or that have been lobbied, like have been pushed out in his direction. There was 2 or 3 in the Burnley game alone. Yeah, that could have been ankle breakers. Yeah. And I don't know if it's like it's welcome to the league kid thing because he's 18, but my biggest takeaway from that is the argument that's going on around some of the absolute twaddle and just nastiness that's coming from people on around the Twitter sphere, or just fans in general, about how it's dividing. Like, look, whether or not you think it's a foul or a red card, it's a wonderful 18-year-old kid by all accounts. And you see what he did afterwards, where he gave his jersey to a kid next to him that had broken his arm and his boots, and he was clapping the fans, both sets of fans, on his way off. He just seems like a wonderful human being. And for you to try and, or not even try, just to lobby that type of hate and vitriol at that kid, it's like, you need to really get out and maybe enjoy some fresh air. I don't know, make some friends, get out of the basement, do something. Like it's toxic. It's not good for your soul.
Or don't spend too long in Elland Road. Maybe that's another thing. So I think we should all follow Nick's example. Actually, I kind of like that, the Harvey Elliott shirt. Cool. Which color did you get, by the way?
I got the home shirt. Yeah.
Home shirt. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't I know I have a face for radio, and I can't pull off the yellow. So the cream color, whatever you want to call it, it's just not getting me this year. So I went with the straight red. So
straight red, yes.
Just like straight.
Yeah.
Too soon.
Okay, let's well, I guess we're towards the end. So I guess without Harvey Elliott, we're gonna have to face a couple of games this week coming up. Milan are coming back to Anfield, which in different times might have been one of the scariest things we could ever have said. But I don't know much about this Milan team. But on paper, this group looks dangerous because they've all got Champions League kind of history. Nick, what's your perspective on Wednesday, Milan, this group, Champions League chances for this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first match day is always tricky. I think it's nice that we're starting at Anfield, just to kind of get us off on the right foot, hopefully. I think we have some momentum coming off Sunday's result as well, which should hopefully help. I think, I don't know if our group has been referred to as the group of death just because of the club names. To your point though, it's not the AC Milan of old, but I think they come in certainly with some experience. I haven't been following them too closely in Italy thus far. I'm not sure how things in terms of their big names, but I
do know they have a 39-year-old publicity hound, unlike the 36-year-old up the East Lancs Road.
But didn't he also ply his trade with the same aforementioned 36-year-olds?
He did, yes.
But yeah, I don't. I certainly expect a win. I think we're in a good spot. Like I said, coming off Sunday's result, I'm certainly optimistic, and I think it helps. Like I said, if we were away, maybe then you certainly maybe a little bit of worry and not sure how that first match day would go. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Wednesday. It should be a great atmosphere, of course. First night of European football in a while, and so yeah, certainly looking forward to them.
Yeah. So I don't know, Sean is still with us.
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Right. Sorry about that. Still trying to.
So I see you have our Champions League shirt from last season. Obviously, without crowds, it wasn't quite the same. But
yeah,
what are you thinking about the group, Milan in particular? What we might do actually against Milan, given the Palace is 3 days later?
Yeah, the squad rotation could be interesting. I don't know how much we rotate or not. I guess that I'm feeling like there could be a chance we might see Nabi and Konate come in. I can't see us making too many other changes. It'd be interesting to see how we handle Virgil if we'll play him 3 times in a week like that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see how we handle that. But yeah, I mean, it's not going to be an easy match. I think Milan's off to a pretty good start. I'm not up on my pre-match podcast quite yet, so I haven't gotten the full rundown. I'm not super familiar with them, but I would expect a tough match, but it's going to be an Anfield Champions League night, and I think we're playing really well right now. I think we're a tough team to beat. It's going to be imagine being in their shoes this early in the season, coming into Anfield with the way we've been playing. I don't think anybody'd want that right now. So I like our chances in the group. It's a really tough group, but again, if we can, knock on wood, stay healthy and keep playing like we are, I like our chances to go through. It's I guess I'm as long as we can stay relatively healthy, I'm pretty confident in the squad. I mean, based on what we've done before, my view is that like last year was a bit of a fluke between the pandemic and all the injuries, and we'll see if that's true or not. The other thing that people tend to discount, I've mentioned before, is that if a number of our players had COVID, and some have suspected that might have impacted Trent and Mane particularly, worse than others. So we'll see. But I like our chances, and it'll be a tough match, but I like our chances to win this one.
I do like to remind on a regular basis that we're still the last team to win the Champions League with a proper crowd. So in my mind, we don't have an asterisk against the last time it was won. I find it like so I kept going on about the fact I thought the final was in Istanbul. Turns out that's in 2 years' time. I don't know what that means for our chances this time around, but I feel like there should be something symmetrical about playing the other team that's got 7 wins when we're 1 away from them.
So where is it this year?
St. Petersburg, turns out. Yeah, then.
Yeah, won't be going to that one.
Close to the Kiev, isn't it? I don't know.
Talk to Nick. He'll be able to get you tickets.
Maybe I'll watch that one on the big.
He might even fly you over himself.
So, Daz, on the upcoming Champions League, last word to you, and then we'll do a quick round on Palace.
I think it was Hernan Crespo that was imploring them to exercise the demons that he's had to suffer since the 2005 loss. I think I want to say it was Hernan Crespo, but I might have misspoke. But he was imploring them to come to Anfield and avenge him. But I watched them when they played Media Hound FC last year. I think it was last year in one of their rounds, and I don't remember them being especially dangerous. They had a couple of guys that again, it's like any AC fans that are listening. I please, I don't take this as a slight. I just don't have the time to watch Serie A. I also have kids and dogs, as you heard, so I have to kind of parcel out my time accordingly. And the Reds get most of it, but I don't know that much about them. I know they lost on Aruma, which I'm not sure how big of a loss that is, but I know that I watched him in the Euros and he was pretty monstrous. Yeah. So I'm not sure how that impacts them. Coming to Anfield, it's going to be an absolute cauldron because it's a big European night. And I've been to a big European night, fortunate enough for me. And it is, it's a whole other different type of atmosphere under the lights. So it's not going to be easy for them, whether or not they come with their tails up. I don't think it matters because that 12th man will be there in the crowd. So, and I think a lot of our guys will be up for it too because they haven't had these nights in front of a crowd. In terms of changes, I agree there should be some sort of rotation, but I think it's probably going to all be in the midfield. I'm not sure if he wants to mess. He might. If having said that, he might drop Matip because I know that you kind of have to wrap him in a little bit of cotton wool. Although he has knocking on wood. He has seemed to have come through the first 4 weeks with very little, with very few scars to show for it. So, but I think that the midfield will probably be somewhat more heavily rotated. I don't think you can mess with the front 3 because they seem to be made out of adamantium, and you'd probably have to weigh down Mo Salah to the bottom of the ocean with the world's largest anchor, and he'd probably still show up after the match dragging it behind him. To keep him away from it. So I'm cautiously optimistic. And after what happened last year, I never really swing anything around in absolutes. But I like our chances. I think that 3 points against AC Milan, and they are still a name, and it's nice to get the points against the name. If nothing else, whether or not they're the team of 2005 or the early 2000s, it's still nice to get 3 points because I dare I say, does anyone remember Red Star Belgrade? Because I've tried as I can at the away fixture. Try as I might, I've tried to get it out of my brain, and I just haven't been able to. So that still looms large that there is the capacity, no matter who you're playing, to take one in the chops.
There is. I hadn't even thought about the game since then. Thank you for bringing that to the fore. So, one final quick round. We're going to play Crystal Palace on Saturday, who I hadn't been thinking too much about until you kind of reminded us that 2 years ago with a crowd, they took a 2-0 lead at Anfield. So Nick, what are your thoughts about that game?
Yeah, they seem to have been playing well the last couple of weeks. Obviously, they beat Spurs 3-0. And then week prior to they drew 2-2 with a West Ham side who seems to be pretty decent this season rather. So Palace is, at least when I think of Palace, they're always a bit of a tricky side. They have Benteke, they have Tompkins. Some of those guys are, made a kind of a formidable side. But again, I think let's see who. So we're at Anfield on Saturday as well, and I think I'm as optimistic as I've been thus far this early in the season. Sean was talking about last year being the fluke, and I kind of see this group of these first 4 matches that, it's almost like they've been off a year collectively. I mean, I think that speaks to the absence of Virgil, in my opinion. Yeah. It's not a brand new side. It just feels like collectively that 11 they haven't been together in a while. And so I think it's going to take a few weeks to kind of get things together. And that's why I was so pleased from what I saw yesterday, because it seems like we've made a lot of progress in those first 4 matches. And so, Palace at home, maybe I'm naive, but I'm optimistic. I mean, Palace maybe turned the corner a bit from the earlier results to obviously showing made quite the performance against Spurs for 3-0. But I'm optimistic. I think we're set. I do.
A few things. If I remember correctly, Trent did not play in that game that we were 2-0 down in, right? Millie was a right back. Did he get red carded?
Correct.
Is that the game?
He did. Yeah, he got carded, and it was the story was the referee. I'm trying to think of John. Was his
picking it? John Moss. John Moss.
Yeah, John Moss. Yeah, John Moss was Milner's PE teacher in grade school. And so they showed the picture of his. I think it was in the whatever their version is of like 7th grade or something. Schoolboy picture, and there's John Moss as his teacher. So yeah, he did pick up it was pretty late tackle. I think everybody.
Yeah, two yellows. Yeah. So, I'm hoping that influenced that particular game. But by the way, if you watch the Palace Tottenham game, which I did because I ended up getting up early and there was nothing else on, Tottenham were awful. Like, yeah, they were truly awful. Yeah. Like this is like kind of Liverpool, like 2012, 2007 worst scenario. You win the first 3 games of the season, you come back from the international break, and you've got all this hope, and it just gets dashed in one game where, like, oh my God, we're not very good.
But they were songless, weren't they?
They were. That's
I think that was the deciding factor, because he makes everything kind of more fluid up front.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Sean, Palace home on Saturday.
Yeah, I like us for a win in that one. I mean, I think Palace has been playing really well. I can't remember, I don't have it in front of me. I seem to remember them doing a lot of really good transfer business this summer. I can't remember all the names, but I think it was Edouard who scored twice for them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he looks like a good player. So not an easy side. I mean, I think that they have a decent chance of finishing in the top half of the league based on how they're playing and based on some of the players they bought. But like I said, I mean, right now, the way that we're playing, I kind of like our chances against just about anybody, the way that we've looked so far, especially the way we looked this past weekend. Again, knock on wood, it's just about kind of everybody staying healthy enough so that we don't have some kind of crazy situation like we got into last year. Yeah. Because it's easy for people to forget we were still top of the league at Christmas last year. We just couldn't hold it together long enough. So, I'm pretty confident in our side, especially with Virgil back. You kind of saw that with the Fabinho goal. We haven't done a lot from set pieces so far, but we look much more of a threat than we were most of the last year with Matip and Virgil in there. It makes a big difference.
Well, the problem is we aren't putting Alisson up for corners anymore. We became way less dangerous when they put Alisson.
I've suggested a number of times over the last couple of months, if we're really in a bind, we could just throw Alisson up at striker and put Kelleher in goal. I think we could do worse.
You know what, man? Klopp out. Doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
Well, thank God we get through an episode without mentioning the FSG out crowd, which we really don't care for.
Oh, you ruined it, Paul.
Oh,
No, kidding.
Yeah. So I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, by the way, this is the first game we're going to play against a team that we didn't like. So far, we've had a better result in the corresponding fixture than we did last year. This is the first team we beat at Anfield, so this won't be possible this time around. So
Yeah.
hopefully that doesn't trip us up. So Daz, almost final word, and then we'll give our thanks to Nick for joining us. And I'm probably wishing that he was doing something else, but final word on Palace, Daz.
So if I remember correctly, this was the last game. We beat Palace and then everything fell apart right after that last year.
Yeah. Yep. 7-0 at Palace.
Yep.
I don't think it was at Anfield, right?
No, wasn't.
No, it was there, and then
It was an early. It was a 7:30 too. It was a 7:30 match too.
What Tucky played. I think he scored.
Yep.
Nabi scored. It was just a free for all of
Everyone scored.
Mo
You get to
came
score.
on
You get to
as a
score.
late sub and scored 2. You remember that because Mane scored. I don't know if a couple, and then Mo came on as a sub and scored a couple.
Yeah, because he was pissed off about being on the bench.
Yeah.
The thing about Palace is I always think of them being a bogey team, and I think the Anfield rep said that they really aren't. If you look at our record against them over the last 4 or 5 years, they haven't laid a glove on us. Well, I guess they when they were 2-0 up, but it's I think it's Kristen ball. I think that's what it was. That when we were that ended up tying that game, that just cemented their bogey team status in my head.
Yeah, it's scarred in your head. Yeah, Suarez trying. Yeah, that was.
I think also won one game at Anfield when Klopp. It was like Klopp's first defeat at Anfield. So I think the significance of the games that they troubled us was bigger than actually their record is.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things that would just have a tendency to stick in your craw.
Yeah,
but I think that their biggest threat will be from Zaha down their left. They usually, if I remember correctly, they usually try and pair him up against Trent, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because Trent can't defend.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think it usually works
just
very
a shit
well.
Kyle
Walker.
Like, I seem to remember them doing that all the time. We always talk about it, and it never really works out very well, at least in the past.
Because turns out the only game he had big success in was the one when Milner was playing it right back instead. Yeah. So, Nick, as our guest, final word. The Reds have got no money, but we're going to win the league. What do you think?
I guess for me, getting to the FSG point, it makes business sense, right? I mean, they have to think that those guys, everybody coming back from injury, they're all like new signings, and it makes sense to me. And that being said, 4 matches in, I think we're as good a shot as any. And certainly Chelsea and a few other clubs have certainly made some big splashes, and I think it's going to be more of a race than just us and City. But like I said, you hate to say, it all comes down to injuries. Every club could say that, right? But I think we look so solid on Sunday at a difficult location against a tricky side with a brilliant manager. I'm too early to talk about winning the league for me. It's a great song, great chant. And it's really, it's the Liverpool way, right? I mean, we just call it as we see it. We're not going to spend big. We're going to do with what we have, and we're going to do it well. And, if we top you, even better, right? We don't need to go out and spend, 100, 150 million pounds. It's, we have our players. I'd like to think that Klopp has a say in this whole thing. And if he's satisfied, I'm satisfied. And I think there's still some players that really haven't, I wouldn't say turned up, but I mean, you still expect some big things, whether it's Taki or Curtis Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Jota has been. Everybody talks about Mo not getting the publicity and the spotlight he deserves. And I'm shocked that they made as big deal about his 100th goal as they did, in 165 matches. 7 quicker than Robbie Fowler.
With over 40 assists too. Nobody mentioned that.
Yeah. But Jota's been unbelievable. You know, where you look at that depth chart, and I love our squad. Most of the time, I'm glad we didn't buy big, because then you have to worry about how they're going to slot in, whoever it was. So I trust the process, you know, as the Embiid.
As Mikel
I trust the process.
Oh man, we don't want to
There's like
my problem with all those people is like you're like that. Like, I'm tired of this Lamborghini. I want a Ferrari too. Like, come on, man.
So we're going to close it out here. I do have one request, actually. Could they just sign up Salah for another couple of years? That would be fine by me. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining us. Thanks, Daz. Thanks, Sean. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with a friend. Follow us on Twitter. We only tweet and retweet sources that we believe are credible, and we swerve any references to publicity hounds from Milan or Manchester. Thanks for joining us.